Hey, everybody. Welcome to week 4 of 5 levels. We are going to talk about the best behaviors and beliefs on level 2 to get you to a level 3. And I'm super excited about this. Brittany and I kept texting back and forth this week because there were so many things in here that reminded us of my journey. So he says in the very beginning that if you find yourself in a place where you need to start working to win people's permission on level 2, start here. He says, connect with yourself before trying to connect with others. The most successful leaders are self-aware. Now, you guys this isn't new to you because we've always talked about the importance of self-awareness, but for a lot of leaders in Plexus, this is kind of a foreign topic, the idea of self-awareness. And I know this to be true because we train on it at Jewel School. And so not everyone has the luxury that we have of having a growth mindset team like this from the beginning. But he talks about the mirror principle and how the first person we must examine is ourselves. The work in a relationship building has to always begin with you. And it reminds me of so many times I have picked up the phone to call Brittany and tell her all the things someone had done wrong in a situation. And her first question was always about me and my response and my behavior and my thoughts. And I would be like, did you just not hear what I told you? That like I told you all these things, and all you want to care about is how I'm responding and why I'm responding and all these things. And so many times I would say, Brittany, you could have just told me how to deal with that girl. And she'd be like, well, what I'm trying to teach you is how to deal with yourself. Like, that's where you have to start. And so I feel like self-awareness, when somebody can master self-awareness, that really is the caveat to being able to go to the next level, because it's real easy for us to size up other people. But a lot of the times, more times than not, there are things that we can do to aid in a relationship, to aid in conflict resolution, to move things forward. Lots of things that we can do if we're willing to first look at ourselves. So name the most important thing you have learned about yourself as a leader. My most important thing I have learned about myself as a leader is that I struggle with the art of listening. I have so many things I want to communicate. I struggle very deeply with listening. And so learning that about myself, having people who have helped call that out in me, has made that a prime focus in my personal growth over the last several weeks very intently, but even before that. So what is the most important thing you've ever learned about yourself?
Okay, so this is funny. About December will be, I think, 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And somebody who may or may not be on this call said that I was intense. And I thought, I'm intense? Like Pot is calling me intense? Like she's the most intense person I've ever met. And I was like, really? I don't think I'm intense. I don't think I'm intense. And I've realized I am very intense and passionate. And I need to be able to, even like when I get on a call, like I can be very serious, or I can really, I know some people don't believe me, but I can think that something's funny and I don't smile or laugh. And like, I can be so intense and yeah. And it's, I need to remember, and it's so funny because I do love people and I love connecting so much. Like I'm very much a connector, but I've got these two sides of my personality that I have to temper together: the intensity and the action and the passion, and then the connection side. So it's knowing those different aspects of my personality and marrying them together was a very eye-opening for me.
That is good. And I have seen you grow in this area.
Well, thank you.
For sure.
So I'll go next. I have learned so much about myself that I didn't really know a lot about my own way of reacting to things, because I see myself as a connector. I love people. I want to support them. And I also see myself as an activator. And what I was missing was that center area where it was like, because I can be like, I want to love you and care for you, but you need to do all these actions too. And I had to realize that I needed to slow myself down, put myself in their shoes, and really meet them where they were. Because like I said, I want to love them, but I'm also going to tell them what they should be doing instead of letting them come to that on their own by connecting with them.
Yeah, that's good.
So something that I've had to grow in as a leader, and Christina's helped me over the last 4 years, we're still working on, is, developing a compassionate competence, because I like to be a very compassionate person. But I want people to see me not only compassionate, but very competent in being able to lead them, where they want to go as their leader.
Man, that's good right there. And I want to tell you guys that conversation with Jackie, if she weren't so open to critical feedback, that could have been a really hard, and it was a hard conversation in the sense that, for all these years, you think you're nailing it on all these areas. And then you have to realize like, man, that if I want to lead a multi 6-figure business with people who are going to take risks, I've got to set myself up as very, very competent. And sometimes if you really are warm, then you got to get to the middle. You got to get to the competence area, in the same sense that if you're super, super intense and very, very competent, you got to get to the warm side, right in the middle. But man, I remember that conversation. I remember being so impressed with how you received that criticism that I actually called Brittany and said, remember how you always tell me you can tell me hard things because it's not like this big, and I'm like, I just had one of those with Jackie, and there was emotion, but it wasn't, man, it was a good conversation. That's one time I felt like we nailed it, Jackie, as a couple. Good job. Britt, you're about to say something. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say where I've become self-aware as a leader is my understanding my tendency to doubt myself and learn to trust myself, because my first thought after I do something or while I'm doing something is just doubt. Like, was that even good? Was that effective? Did that work? But that I really should trust myself more, because I generally do a good job, but it's not my first response, or it's not my first thought to go there.
Yeah, you definitely are your worst critic for sure. But you generally do a good job. That's why we all follow you. So congratulations.
But I'm over here like, oh my gosh, they expecting something. They know me. When are they gonna realize?
We're following, girl. We going. Listen, we going. Wherever you end up, we all going. So no pressure, Britt, no pressure. Okay. This question can be for self-reflection, but listen, it's not okay if you don't know some of the answers to this following question. Now, it's not unrecoverable because I didn't either, but if somebody were to say, tell me what your strengths are, some of you are going to flounder. You're not going to know. And that's a problem. That's a problem, because if you will operate in your strength zone, like if you really hone in on things that you are good at, you can become excellent, but you got to first know them. But now you guys can recall and recite all kinds of weaknesses that you have, and you want to spend time working on those. But here's what they say. If you spend time working just on your weaknesses, the best you can become at that is mediocre. Listen, if I really tried to work hard on my hospitality and aesthetics with decorating, I'm still going to be terrible, y'all. Trust me. Ask my friends. I just ain't never going to get good at it. So what I can do is surround myself with people who are good at it, and I can become excellent at what my strengths are. So you have to become aware of what your strengths and weaknesses are. It's not okay to stay ignorant there. So if you're not aware, then you guys, there are ways to go and learn. Take some personality tests and then really, really analyze that. Okay, he says in there, the first person you have to get along with is yourself. And listen, I have a couple of leaders who have struggled with this over the years, and I have had to say, stop talking to one of my good friends that way. And it would be talking about themselves, because they just couldn't realize the things that they were saying, how damaging that can be for what your brain is going to believe. He says, if you have a low self-image, you cannot expect to perform as a leader at any level higher than your own self-assessment. Even to attempt would be to risk self-sabotage. Meaning if you're over here thinking you're worthless, you can't lead nobody nowhere, you know, your brain is going to operate to make yourself right. So stop talking to yourself that way. Again, go find your strengths and then just work to become excellent there. I see this show up in Plexus as comparison. We spend more time wishing we were more like so-and-so or had this person's personality or her network or her downline or whatever. And that leads to us becoming bitter about what they have and what we don't versus appreciative of the gifts that we have. That keeps us from stepping into who we are as a potential leader. He says, the first person to cause me problems is me. Again, ask me how I know. After these long conversations with Brittany, I'm like, well, it would have been helpful if you told me all this before the situation arose. Thanks a lot. So question, have you ever created your own problems? What, if anything, in business would you do differently now as a result?
I'd say not assume.
Oh,
I think assuming has been one of my hardest things in life. And, you know, starting to be able to stop myself and ask good questions has been a game changer.
I feel like you must have had these conversations with Brittany too, then, Kayleen. Hate when she says, how do you know that? I'm like, what do you mean? Why don't you know that? I'm telling you, this is what happened. You should be assuming the same things I'm assuming. So annoying.
Mine would be not deciding that the actions of my past determine my future in the business.
So
Instead,
how do you overcome that? Like
how do you overcome it? Well, stop focusing on what you did and work on how you can grow and become better in what you want to accomplish. Like really seeing your vision of where you're going and stop deciding that it's already been decided by your past and work in your now for your future.
That's good.
Okay, so the problem I've caused myself is not moving forward. Like that would be the problem, like stalling, like everything's stalling. So, and the problem was me and my thoughts and fill in the blank. I'm not blank enough. It was whatever you can put in there. Smart enough. I don't know. Not really. I think I'm beautiful. So no, I'm just kidding. I'm not smart enough, pretty enough, like all the things. I was saying that I'm not enough to lead whoever.
And they're all going to want to know what you've done to overcome that and what you did. Can you tell you? I mean, I can tell them what you did. What'd you do? Like, in spite of feeling that way, what have you started doing?
Just taking action anyways.
Thank you.
And then the belief has come. Like if you ask me right now, y'all, today I feel like a freaking diamond. So like just taking the actions over and over, even if I'm not seeing results, and doing it and messing up, and then calling you in April and telling you what I did, and then getting your feedback, and then doing it again.
So many tough conversations. I've had to listen to April have so many tough conversations where it would have been nice to make you just feel better. But what she cared more about was your progress. And so she'd be willing to say, well, Rachel, here's the thing. This is the same thing you told me the last 3 times we've talked about this. So unless you're willing to change your actions, you can't expect to change your outcomes. And then you being willing to lean into that. So I love that you feel like a diamond today. I'm excited about all the things you have going on. Anybody else? Okay.
I got one from
Come
you,
on, Lydia.
Christina. You told me, like one of the first coaching calls you told me, and I was like a problem I've had my whole life. I talk too much and don't listen enough. But the way you worded it was like all of a sudden it was a new light bulb that went off. Like I viewed it differently the way you worded it to me. And I'm like, okay. So now when I am asking someone a question to get to the bottom of how to fix it for them, I want to tell them how to fix it right now. Like, oh, well, here's my idea that came to my mind. I make myself count to 5. Like, keep listening for 5 more seconds and see if you change what was about to come out of your mouth. And normally it does change it normally does change what was going to come out of my mouth. Because a lot of times, especially with one of my builders, she likes to talk her problems out. So she will create a problem, then she will solve her own problem while still talking. and then come up with a new, like the problem she wants me to help her with is actually 4 problems from now. If I just stop and let her keep talking.
Yeah. She's externally processing. There are some of us like that. Yeah. That's good. Good. And I did, for the record, y'all, I did not say, Jessica, you talk too much. But what I did say is, who spends the majority of the time talking? And she was like, me. And I'm like, and listen, again, hard conversations. She was willing to learn and grow. Here we are. So it goes back to last week, be willing to have those hard conversations. I saw somebody said in the chat, I avoid confrontation. View it as love conversation. It doesn't have to be confrontation. If you're having it with somebody who's emotionally mature, it doesn't have to be a confrontation. Okay. John Maxwell says, most people who don't get anywhere in life have themselves to blame. That was a relief for me. I'm like, oh, okay, it won't be me to blame. Great. They don't believe in themselves. They create problems and then they pretend they are someone else's fault. Anyone know somebody like that? They want change, but won't grow. This is why it's so important as you're building this that you are watching people's feet so you cannot be deceived by their words. They can want change. Y'all, people in the worst situations want things to be different. They wish it would be different. Yes, but are they willing to be the difference? So question, how can you tell if someone is willing to grow?
One of the things I look for is they're coming to you with questions. And then when you say like, oh, how are you, ask them like to give them their opinion or how do you think you can solve it? Like they're eager to go find the answer and then come back to you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, I mean, usually if somebody's willing to grow, you can see them doing things that you know are uncomfortable. Like I'm thinking about Whitney specifically. Like over the past 6 months, I've seen her do more uncomfortable things than I've seen anybody else do in the past 6 months. And she is growing and like exponentially through it. And it's awesome.
I
love it.
love that. And the people who aren't growing are going to sit back and create problems and blame someone else. It must be because Whitney has this, or she has done that, or it's because what she's willing to do. She's willing to get out of her comfort zone. Yes. Yes. That's good. That is very good. I had a situation like that just earlier tonight. I hope she doesn't mind me telling her, but someone messaged me. Her name rhymes with Hacky. And she's on this call, but she messaged me. She's like, hey, do we have an opportunity event on the calendar? I was like, yep. As soon as you put one on there, it's like, how about you lead one for your team? She's like, that is a great idea. 4 minutes later, she messaged me, had a date, had a time. I'm like, I dig it. And she has every excuse in the world. I mean, they got a lot going on into the school year, all that, but she wants to grow and she's going to have to get uncomfortable. So way to go, Hacky. Okay. The first person you have to change is yourself. This is in the area of self-improvement. So I'm curious, the statement, if you don't take responsibility for yourself, then don't expect your life to become any different from how it is right now. What did that mean to you? If you don't take responsibility for yourself, then you can't expect your life to become any different from what it is right now.
That meant for me not getting defensive whenever things are called out that need to be fixed and you don't want to deal with it, or you want to make excuses. It's humbly saying, yep, I know that about myself and I am okay with hearing that because I know it needs to change, and just not being defensive when you are given guidance.
Ownership. Yep. I dig that. That's hard. Sometimes it feels like eating humble pie. And that's where if you have this relationship that he talks about on level 2, if the person who is having this conversation has invested in the relationship, those conversations, they still feel it's okay if it stings a little. Brittany said earlier, we talked yesterday, or day before, she said, when we have hard conversations, the one you chew on the most is if it feels like in some way you've disappointed me. And so then I'm reflecting like, why is that? Like the other one, she says, I just roll with, I just receive it, change it, move on. But if I felt like I've wronged her, she said, I chew on it the most. And I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting to know about me. But yeah, ownership. never, ever, ever feel like I have the best or rightest answer ever. I feel like I got good answers, which is why I talk too much. But I mean, I'm completely okay with taking responsibility for myself. So that's good, Shannon. Okay. And I have down here, this makes me think of former team members who refused to grow because they would not receive criticism. It became this big emotional drama fest if you had to give them feedback, and they seemed to think that the deck was somehow always stacked against just them. However, the only difference between them and those of us who are here now is that we were willing to do the work on ourselves to overcome the stacked deck. Y'all, everybody has a deck stacked. Everybody does. It's just a matter of working to build yourself up so that you can step right over the deck. The deck ain't going nowhere, right? Okay, he says the next thing you have to do is develop a people-oriented leadership style. Leaders listen, learn, and then lead. Man, if that didn't make me think I'm like, okay, wait, so I'm supposed to listen first, then learn some things based off of what I've listened to, and then lead. Sometimes I put them in the wrong order. Anybody else put them in the wrong order? Sometimes I try to lead first and then realize, like, after it becomes this mess because I did it out of order. Okay. So he says, this is a quote from the book: leading an organization is as much about soul as it is about systems. Effective leadership finds a source and understanding. Unless the leader has an awareness of humanity, a sensitivity toward the hopes and aspirations of those he leads, and the capacity to analyze the emotional forces that motivate conduct, he will be unable to produce and be successful, regardless of how often other incentives are given. Man, I feel like this is why Brittany has always been so successful. You guys always want to know the secret sauce. I think it's this. I think she's always had an awareness of humanity, always has paid attention to our hopes and aspirations, and then is always considered, some people call it benefit of the doubt, but she's always considered, okay, what would have motivated that reaction? What would have motivated that behavior? Why did this person take this action in the same situation and this one take that one? She's always paid very close attention to that. And I think it's important to know that you can't ever systemize emotions. People are human beings. We can't systematize that. So what does this line mean to you? You must be concerned with people's emotions, and you must think in terms of human capacity and less in terms of regulations. You must be concerned with people's emotions, and you must think in terms of human capacity and less in terms of regulations.
So I know I can get very focused on like the steps that need to be taken. And I think it is really important that we remember, like I said before, putting ourselves in their shoes, asking some good questions, like really seeing where somebody is coming from so that you can lead them best. Even if there is a steps that need to be taken, you need to also understand where they are in that process first before you can call them to that action.
To me, it means oftentimes when people are not taking the right actions, it's because they're letting their emotions get in the way. And so understanding their emotions and helping them process that or trace it back to a thought that's probably not even a true thought or a right thought. A lot of times that can propel people into action because they realize the error in their own thinking.
Yeah.
I think also it's like it made me think of a dictatorship, like someone just barking out orders, the things they need to be done. But if you're not people focused and kind of like giving praise and rewards, you would get a lot more done if you like get more bees with honey than vinegar.
Yep. That's good. Yeah. I wrote down, it makes me think of the law of timing. Know when it's time to request more from your people and then when it's time to extend grace. And this is something tangible off of what Brittany just said. When someone's not taking the right actions, like she said, usually it has to do with emotions and thoughts. And so she told me one time, when you're coaching them, Christina, and trying to figure out like, why aren't they taking the action? Like most of the time it's not because they don't know what action to take. They know what action they should be taking. And then there's guilt because they're not taking it. It's like this thing. She's like, try to identify what thought they're believing that's not true. Like try to get to the bottom of what thought is not true. And then try to help them come up with a replacement true thought. Like what can they receive as true? And can we replace that wrong thought with the true thought? And that was just a little tangible freebie that helped me a ton. If you're like me and don't think like Brittany does, because I'd always be like, okay, well, how am I supposed to know what they're thinking? What am I supposed to do? But that is very helpful because sometimes it will be like what Rachel said, like, I can't reach out to this dream teamer because I'm not this enough. And then it's okay. Well, like who told you that? Like, where did you learn that? And help her to identify that even the origin of the thought's wrong. And so how can we replace that? Okay, tell us of a time when your concern for someone and their emotions aided in your journey as a leader, as opposed to just what actions they should or should not be taking. A time when your concern for someone and their emotions aided in your journey as a leader.
I would say during the process of vision casting and helping people find their why.
Yep. That's good. Yep. Because as y'all know, if you watch the new Getting Started video, that why is going to be what propels them to get out of bed and take the action you want them to take. So yes, Chris, helping them identify that is definitely going to aid in your journey as a leader.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yep. Tell us of a time when you're concerned for someone and their emotions versus just being concerned with their action aided in your journey leading them.
Okay, so I can't personally speak of myself, but I do want to speak of my leader because Michelle is really great at this because I am the type that just want to push my emotions aside and let's just get to work. But you can't have one without the other. You have to stop to process your emotions. And she makes me do that. And honestly, that's just something I've never really done. I've always tried to like, okay, let me keep that in the box until I can process that at another time. And sometimes you just need to process so that you can actually move forward in taking the right actions so that they're fruitful. So I just want to give her a big shout out for being that person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen that as a sideline as well. Sometimes I'm like, stop looking into my soul, Michelle. I'm like, go back where you came from. All right. He says the next thing that you have to do is practice the golden rule. This allows everyone to feel respected. What stood out to me about that line was where he said, treating others the way you hope to be treated, the way that you hope to be treated will keep you from being tempted to cross the line from motivating others to manipulating others. And to me, it's real easy to not in a callous way, like not in a, oh, I'm going to manipulate you to take advantage of you kind of way, but like, okay, well, if you're not motivated to take the action, then let me manipulate that action by incentivizing overly. Let me dangle a carrot instead of addressing why aren't they moving anyways? Like, what is the problem? And so that is helpful for me. Like, treat others the way you want to be treated, like see them for what could be going on versus trying to just dangle a carrot, give them a prize, push them forward. This will also ensure that you're serving your team versus expecting your team to serve you. And then he says, become the chief encourager of your team. As a leader, you have great power to lift people up. So what are some ways that you work to encourage your team? I think people can always love some takeaways, like what's something that you're doing that you find works to encourage your team? Maybe other leaders on the call will try it. My team loves a Starbucks. I don't even drink Starbucks. I don't even know what to order there, but every once in a good while, I'll have a little Starbucks card and send them the little scan thing. I put it on auto reload and I say, hey, everybody treat yourself to a coffee this week. They think that's fun. What else do people do? What are some ways you encourage your team?
Well, I learned this from Brittany. She would just send me things, podcasts, books that she was learning that she thought that I would find encouraging or relate to. So I try to do that with my team. And it's not even necessarily about Plexus. It could be, you know, a sermon or a message or a podcast. And that like feeds my soul. And I learned that from her. And so I try to do that with my team.
I agree. And you know what makes that powerful when she does that? Come to find out she does it to me too, but she'll put a sentence in the link that will tell me in some way she heard something I said recently and will say, this spoke to that. Like, remember when you were worried about Bailey, or remember when you and Brandon were like, whatever, hey, this might help with that. Like, it'll be something, it might not even be recent, but it just says, hey, I'm listening to you.
Yeah.
And then it makes me think, okay, what's something April told me recently that I could connect with her on? Because it makes me think deeply.
I like to send my team a card. So like something specific to them. And I remember April doing this when I first got started, and it meant a lot to like get a piece of mail. And so I will randomly send a card like, I see you, I appreciate your hard work, like you're doing so amazing. And I think that's special, just to get something tangible.
I kind of forgot the question, but based on the answers, Angela sends out bracelets every time you make a rank, or like on a trip, and or a necklace. And that means so much to me. So I've been doing that with the people who are under me, if they silver or whatever. So I really like that.
I like gifts too, Cecilia.
I just try to listen to like each person, because I'm still so small on my team. Like I can still individually, like with every single person. And like with Corey, she can say, oh, well, you know, I don't have one of those fancy blender balls that I always see you drinking your Slim in a blender ball. Okay, cool. That's a $15 thing I can grab off Amazon, ship straight to her house. She is so appreciative. It encouraged her. It sparked a new thing in her. So like, I bought somebody their Atomic Habits book because they were like, well, I don't know, I got to see if I can budget for it. Cool, no problem. If you'll read the book, it's at your door. So I just try to listen to like what would mean something to further them right now.
Yep, I love that. That's thoughtful. So the bottom line here is you got to be intentional. You got to be intentional. And so, I mean, if you're like me, and y'all listen, one of my strengths is not being thoughtful. Some people have that gift. It's not my gift, but I do work hard on it. So I will put stuff in my planner every couple of months, like love your team, like love on your team. And that just reminds me, like, hey, have I done anything lately? Like, I'm just real intentional about that. I also have my assistant who every now and again, she'll say, hey, listen, just popping in. What have you done to love on your team lately? So be intentional. If it's not something that comes naturally, I mean, I'm 90 miles an hour all the time. So just forcing yourself to stop and think. Okay. He says in here that you have got to strike a balance between care and candor. Now, this is real interesting to me. Some people think that succeeding on the permission level of leadership means treating people on your team like family. And he says that's almost always a mistake. Your family is going to get unconditional love, it's just going to be different with your family. He says what makes a family great is not what makes a team great. Families value community over contribution. Businesses value contribution over community. The best teams strike a balance. And I feel like some of you yellows are like, well, that is rude. Y'all, it's not. Everyone is here because they want to build a business. And this is a business. And this is why, and he talks about this further on, but about making decisions for the greater good of the entire team. Now, will there be some people who are on the outskirts of that and who don't agree or wish things had been different? Sure. But what is the greater good, and who's making the contributions that we need to consider? He says others think being a permissional leader means giving team members permission to do whatever they want. However, if you build relationships with people and care about them and treat them with respect, you'll actually have more opportunities to speak candidly and have conversations with them that will help them grow and perform better. The worst thing that Brittany could do for me is care so little about me that she's not willing to be honest. People say, well, I just care too much to have that conversation. I'm like, really? Because it sounds like you care too little. Care enough to put yourself out there and be willing to be emotionally invested in that conversation. As a leader, it's your responsibility and privilege to help the person become better. And that is often because of a candid conversation. I could tell you guys so many candid conversations with Brittany and I. It is just at this point comical. I can almost tell when it's coming and meet her there. I'm like, okay, we must be about to have one of those. I see that look in your eye. What did I do? Sometimes on a totally different continent. I'd be like, oh Lord, what I do? But I mean, listen, I know at this point it's going to be helpful. And I'm just like, okay, well, let's have this conversation. So
if you could just act right.
I try so hard. I've been trying to act right. Gracious. But listen, what if she just assumed I did not care? Or listen, he says, you got to decide if a person is a can't or a won't. And for me, when Brittany is willing to have these hard conversations, it's because I'm assuming she understands that it's something that I've overlooked. Like, it's not because I won't. Like, I'm always willing, whatever it's going to be. Because he says if it's a can't, it's about abilities. Like, then okay, there's a skill set or there's something that we need to overcome so that this person can be empowered to be a can. Can'ts are who I want to work with. Give me all the can'ts. I will help them find all the solutions. A won't, I ain't got time for. The won'ts are the ones who are going to be over here feeling like the world's against them. It's everybody else's problems. If only Christina and Brittany would have done this, that, or the other thing. I'm telling you, I won't help. I mean, I won't spend time there. Can't is about abilities and can most likely be helped. Won't is about attitude. If this person has a won't attitude, like you're offering feedback and solutions and whatever, and they just continue to not be open, it's time to let the person know that there's a problem. Because here's the deal. We hire people for what they know and fire them for who they are. Now, we don't have the luxury to hire and fire people here, but we do have the opportunity to choose who we pour our time, blood, sweat, tears, emotions, and energy into. And if you believe someone's attitude is going to continue to be an issue, I do believe in direct and honest communication. Bring it to the forefront. Always assume they're just unaware. Always assume that they're just unaware, but bring it so that they can be aware, and then gauge their action after that. Okay, this was good. He says, care without candor creates dysfunctional relationships. Candor without care creates distant relationships. So share a time when a candid and honest conversation led to growth on your team. Except Brittany, don't share. Share about Michelle.
I was just reaching for the unmute button.
Share about somebody else. None of y'all having hard conversations with your people?
I had one with a level 1 about a month ago. And it was one of those conversations where I need to have this because it's almost like her feet aren't matching her mouth. And she's using, like, she wasn't realizing that she was like using her excuses to not get out of her comfort zone to like message people about the business. And it was just almost like, those were like, she had a right to use her excuses, if that makes sense. So I just told her, we came to that point. And I remember when Abby had that conversation with me that it's like, I can't do anything more with her unless she just does it. So it was kind of one of those hard conversations. And then after that, she realized what she was doing. And then she went and took the action, because I said, I can't teach you anymore. There's no more like podcasts. There's no more like, skill set that you need. It's just, you're not taking the action. So we'll see after this month how it goes.
I've had, especially at the end of 2021, I was kind of in the school of hard conversations with my husband, with my parents, with my team. I mean, with the carpet, you name it, I was having a hard conversation with them. And I had, one of them was with one of my teammates, was about systems and a lack thereof, and using the law of navigation, like they just didn't have systems in place. And I could see where that was going to end. Like, well, this is your choice, but this is where you're headed. Just know that this is what you're creating. On another one, very similar to Sarah Marie, told one of my people, like, she said, well, do you want to schedule another coaching call? I said, well, actually, I just need to see that you're going to be working consistently. There's no need to have a coaching call unless you are taking action and doing your IPA. I mean, those are not easy conversations to have, but I care more about them than I care about how they feel towards me. Or even like, this was a really hard conversation. Oh, about leadership lids. That was a really hard conversation about, if you want these people, what are you doing to grow and attract and raise your own lid? That was hard. But I was also preaching to myself, right? But it's because I love these people and want to grow. And again, learn that from Brittany so wonderfully. Not that I learned so wonderfully, but she does it wonderfully.
Well, thank you, Michelle. So did you see that it produced growth, these conversations?
Absolutely. And people know what to do. I mean, there's still some that are in process, but definite growth. And there's others that I haven't mentioned. And the interesting thing is, not all the hard conversations yield growth, but the ones that want to grow will. So it's kind of the cream will rise to the top, like those that want to grow will, based on that. And then it shows me then who to continue to invest in, and who really has the capacity and the hunger and the desire to change.
Yeah, I love that, Michelle, because I just recently had a conversation with a level 1, and it was a hard conversation, and it, makes me, with all the butterflies and everything, just nervous of what her response would be. But it didn't necessarily yield growth, and it yielded growth on my part because it helped me to determine, okay, what kind of team that I want to build, and then also growing in confidence. But also, for her part, she just wasn't willing to do the work that it needed to take. So just knowing that that's okay too, as long as you're still willing to have those hard conversations, because that their potential, and trying to help them. So
Yeah.
That's so.
Oh, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Hmm?
Make sure I'm coming through, because my signal's not the best. I was just gonna piggyback off of that, and my heart was beating because I was feeling like, okay, I have to share something, but because it's very similar to that, I feel like I'm learning to grow in this area. And definitely Michelle's had some conversations with me on this exact subject, with me being able to get out of my comfort zone with having some conversations. And I did have one with one person, and it was growth for me. One of the people that I had it with is not quite there yet. I'm not giving up that she won't be there at some point, but it had to do with not even being willing to do any actions, watch any videos or any of the things. And it was hard, but we had to have a conversation because things were being said to other teammates and things that were like as if she wasn't getting any help. But then when I had to actually come face to face, and I wanted to be kind, but I wanted to be upfront about the situation. Like, look, let's talk to me about this. I'm willing to help you. If there's something that I did to offend you, if there's something I'm doing wrong, come to me. I want to help you in this area. And then I had to be honest about it, and assess the situation. And that was very hard for me, but it was growth, I feel like. And then it helped me with another conversation with a person that I love so dearly, that I was able to see actual growth come from that conversation, where this person was like, is similar, not similar, but down on themselves and thinking, I don't know if I can do this and I can't get out of this thing. And I was able to say, look, you can do this, and we need to stop believing this and that. And I was able to have that conversation better because of what had happened before with the growth. And this person did choose to say, okay, and hit a rank, and it's just continuing to grow.
Yeah, that's good. Here's the thing, Angela, when you have conversations that are very candid like this, there's growth even if the person decides that they're not in it, because you know what it allows you to do? It allows your brain capacity to grow. It gives you vital information about where do I spend my time and emotional energy versus you sitting over here trying to beg and plead or bribe or drag or whatever. It gives you vital information. It allows everyone to come to the table. How people choose to leave the table, it's still up to them, but it at least lets you know what it is you're working with. So I love that. Something that I love that I think we really need to pay attention to is he says, caring defines the relationship where candor directs it. Just because you care deeply about people does not mean you're leading them anywhere. And I know for yellows, that it feels like, oh, that's just can't be the case. It is. Candor is what's going to direct and drive that person's potential. So you have to have both. But here's the thing, you can't just have candor because then your people are not going to receive your criticism because you've not taken the time to invest in the relationship. So it's got to be both and. He says, caring should never suppress candor, while candor should never displace caring. Good leaders must embrace both. Okay, for those of you who like tangible, when it's time to have a hard conversation, these questions on page 115 and 116, tape them to your desk. Run through them before you allow yourself to just word vomit in the middle of a situation. So many times, I'm so glad that I have learned to stop and accuse myself first before I assume something about someone else. So before I go word vomit on someone and make accusations or even assumptions, I'm sitting here going, okay, wait, well, first of all, what is my role here? What is my role here? What am I assuming? And I mean, I can do this now. I can self-coach this. Like Brittany doesn't even get to hear half of my drama anymore because now I can self-coach this. And then if it's time for one of these conversations, I get to look at this list and say, okay, I got to talk to Jackie about coming across less warm, more competent. Have I invested in a relationship? Yep. Do I value them as a person? Yep. Am I sure this is her issue and not mine? Listen, that's the one I spend the most time on. I'm not even kidding. Like, am I sure this is a her issue and not a me issue? Is this because I want her to be different or I think she should be, or what, or is this something that is truly going to hold them back? So take this list somewhere, because when you're certain in all of these things, then when you go into that conversation, you can feel confident. You can feel confident. And when that, if emotions are high, you can even say, listen, I just want you to know I spent a lot of time reflecting before this call. And that's why I'm here. And it allows you to set yourself up that way. Okay.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yes.
I also love this list of questions, and I was reading them and I highlight them. The one I spend the most time on is the, am I willing to invest time and energy to help them change? Because I mean, if I believe that they want to change and that they will change and that they'll put in the work required to change, then yes, I would be willing to help them. But sometimes that's not the case. But the other thing I want to say is I get a lot of questions from diamonds lately about how do I coach somebody who's my close friend. And my answer to that is my level 1 leaders are my close friends because of this balance between care and candor. And same thing with my upline. Like, I respect her because she's willing to shoot me straight. Like, I think because I'm willing, like they know that I'm going to be honest and call them and challenge them to reach their highest potential and not settle or, not allow them to make excuses for themselves or whatever. Like, I think it strengthens the relationship. It doesn't damage our relationship, but these conversations are very hard for me. And I generally have to think hard, like long and hard, before I will actually address something. Not long as in like drug out, but I do put a lot of thought in. Like, I will think through it. Like, I didn't know these questions before I just read this, but I mean, a lot of this intuitively, like I'm going through it in my mind. Like, do I say something? When's a good opportunity? And then I have to really care about the person in order to, if I don't care, then I won't say anything, because then I have to deal with the aftermath. after I've communicated the hard thing that they needed to hear to help them grow, then I beat myself up. I wonder if they're mad at me for a long time. Sometimes people do get mad. Sometimes people are not willing to grow, and that's even more painful. But most of the time, I mean, the leaders that you all know their names, they're willing to grow. And those are relationships worth investing in. And because I care, I feel like being a coach and a friend is kind of hand in hand, like they are kind of the same thing for me. Because when I care and I want to help somebody reach their potential, of course to me, it is being a good friend to tell them what they need to hear to grow.
Yep. So good. So good. Okay. Man, that's good. All right. Question for self-reflection, because I want to be mindful of time. And I'm curious your answers. So maybe when we get finished with this, you guys can drop this somewhere. I don't know where you can drop it, but do motives matter when having these conversations? Do motives matter? If the outcome is what you're after, does your motive for the conversation even matter? Why or why not? And I would love to be able to get into that, but we can't. Okay. Things to do when it's time to have candid conversations. Remember, do it quickly, calmly, privately, and thoughtfully. Guys, it is never, ever appropriate to go sideways or down to anyone who is not directly the person you're communicating with. It is never okay. Ever. Ever. You're not going to convince me there's ever a time when it's okay for you to call a sideline about something that your upline has said or done. It is never the right thing to do. Always quickly, calmly, privately, and thoughtfully. Never in emotion. I don't care if you have to sit on it for 2 days until you can get your emotions under control. Sit on it. Okay, quickly, beliefs that will help you move up to a level 3. Number 1, relationships alone are not enough. Now that you've connected with them, you must take people somewhere so they can accomplish something. This is the basis for that conversation I had with Jackie several months ago. I'm like, Jackie, you're great at relationships. And I didn't know this then, but I'm like, that's not enough. It's not enough. We've got to help people see that you're who they need to get them somewhere further than they currently are. So you got to take them somewhere so that they can accomplish something. And listen, I'm glad that Brittany didn't stop at becoming my friend. Matter of fact, people look at us now and think we were always this way. It was years into building this. She always pursued a relationship, but she was really focused on helping me go somewhere, helping me accomplish something. The friendship came as a side effect. I wasn't looking for a friend. I was looking for someone who could help me accomplish something. And her becoming my friend was a side effect of that. Okay, number 2, building relationships require twofold growth, growing toward each other and growing with each other. It requires compatibility and intentionality. You guys, I will always tell you, be choosy. Choose wisely. When you're building, choose wisely. Choose people that you are compatible with, and then intentionally grow together. Now, listen, compatible don't mean on Wednesdays we wear pink. That's not what it means. If somebody's has a growth mindset, has integrity, and is willing to grow, you compatible. Okay, you compatible. You ain't got to look alike, sound alike, but grow toward each other, build that relationship. You extend an olive branch, they extend an olive branch. Gradually, you get closer and closer and closer. Guys, it's okay if you're not fast friends in the beginning. Brittany and I weren't either. One time she made me talk to her on the phone for an hour on a Saturday morning. And I'm like, what are we doing? What are we doing? I don't need a friend. I don't okay, can we get to the plexus part? She just kept asking questions about my family, about my life, trying to catch up. And I'm just like, can we get to the point? But by the time that the call was over, I was like, she's nice. She's nice. And then there was another call and another call and another call. And it just kind of happened that way. It's probably how Misty felt when I made her go to Ruby Tuesday so many times. Okay. Question for self-reflection, because we're out of time. What are some ways that you can grow with your team? Brittany has been very intentional over the years of doing this. She did not wait for Fallon to offer her opportunities to grow with us. She created opportunities. It might be, hey, let's all listen to this podcast and put our thoughts in here. It might be, hey, let's read this book together. It might be, hey, let's do this class together. Let's go to this conference together. Like, we've always done things to intentionally grow. So what can you do to grow with your team? He says, achieving the vision is worth risking the relationships. Some of you are like, oh, why? Because this is a business. Achieving the vision is worth risking the relationships. Listen to me, the relationships worth keeping will stay the course. They'll be deepened because of the vision. The ones who don't stay weren't meant to be part of the vision anyways. They were just in the way. So choose. Okay, you must be willing to take people out of their comfort zone. Know that they might fail. They might implode. They might quit. Risk always changes the relationship. If you risk and win, then your people gain confidence. If I tell Jackie, go do this hard thing, and she does it and it's successful, she will be more confident. You then you would have shared history, which makes your relationship stronger. Every time you lead your person towards a success, it deepens that relationship. They trust you. If you fail, you lose relational credibility and have the opportunity to rebuild the relationship. Relationships worth having will see this play out over and over and over again. This is important, you guys. In Plexus, when determining when to go for a rank up, use stats, analytics, past history, help somebody make calculated risk. Don't let them play small, but don't let them play a fool either. They are trusting you. Sometimes as leaders, we want to get so excited because somebody wants to go for a rank, but they need 913 people, and the most they've ever added in a month is 4. Use history, use analytics, ask someone smarter than you a question. Because listen, they're counting on you to tell them when it's time for a calculated risk. And even when you tell them a good calculated risk, be okay that sometimes they will fail. They'll fail, and you can rebuild and re-strengthen that relationship, and it will be even better for it. You guys, I'm telling you, what stuck out to me the most is that candor, it defines the relationship, or caring defines the relationship. Candor will direct it. Your job is to take people somewhere. They got a mama to care about them. You need to get them where they want to be. That is your role. All right, any last thoughts? We have 1 minute.
I love that part where he says the leader, I don't remember if it was a sports team or what, but somebody came to their leader and said, would you still like me as much if I wasn't this much of a producer? Or if I didn't get these same results? And he was like, yeah, I'd like you as much. I just would miss having you around. And I felt like that was
That's only funny to you because I think you've said that to me before.
No,
Pretty sure.
No, but I mean, it drives home the point about the family. What is good for a family is not the same thing that's good for a team or a business.
Yep.
And anyway, I mean, I think our team has a great balance of both.
I agree. All right, y'all. I'm very proud of you for sticking this through. Level 3 next week. It's going to be good. All right. Bye, guys.